Wish TV, All Indiana Politics
is your premier source for Indiana politics.
Focusing on issues that matter to you.
I still want us to be the best in the Midwest.
We can't afford another lockdown.
Give the citizens of this country the relief they need.
Education in the state of Indiana remains priority number one.
In-depth, nonpartisan coverage.
We don't know exactly where the economy will be in January.
People are worried with good reason.
Exclusive interviews with Indiana's political leaders.
We have the resources here in the state of Indiana to care for those who are in need.
Expert analysis on critical legislation.
We need to reform those laws.
This recovery is going to take some time.
We've got to anticipate that there'll be a budget shortfall.
From Wish TV, this is All Indiana Politics Podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network.
Good morning and welcome to All Indiana Politics. I'm Garrett Bergquist in for Phil Sanchez. We continue our coverage of the Republican primary for governor with Jamie Reitenour. Her background is in real estate and in ministry. She tells me she's running because she has been called to do so.
I've never desired to be in politics before, and it was a little over 6 years ago that I was called. And when people ask what that means, I just describe it as when you as a parent are telling your children what to do in regards to cleaning up the house, you normally have to call them by name to get them to move. And so scripture talks about people being called. I was in downtown Indianapolis. There was a whisper over my ear, you're going to be the governor of the state of Indiana. I put that on the shelf, and then 4 years later, I was at a Panera, and in 2 different weeks, people came up to me and told me exactly what I was called to do, specifically speaking to the Lord giving me a love for the people, and then also that I had a calling on my life, and I needed to let my past go, and I needed to walk in that calling and allow the Lord to renew my mind, that I might approve the pure and acceptable will of God. And so my faith in Jesus Christ is very important to me. I operate out of the book of Nehemiah in scripture. And in Nehemiah, the book that I was pointed to, it actually says that he himself was a governor. And I didn't know that when the Lord gave me that book. So I have my confirmations. But again, I'm truly the only outsider in the race, never had a desire to be in politics. But oh, how I love the people of the state of Indiana and believe that they need a governor that is going to represent them in their voice.
Now, in your campaign, you use the slogan Indiana Goodness. Tell me what that means, what that entails.
I love Indiana Goodness. Indiana Goodness is everything that her people represent. We get that from scripture where it talks about do not be overcome with evil, but overcome evil with good. I think a lot of times, whether it's conservatives or even in the state of Indiana, we see Democrats and libertarians that can oftentimes sit at our dining room tables and talk about everything that's going wrong. But how much do we actually come to the table and say we're going to present the solutions? And so what my campaign represents is good solutions. And we believe that best reflects the people of the state of Indiana. There are hardworking people, very special. Indiana is not a one-size-fits-all. And I really think that politicians are missing her because they're approaching Indiana through their lens instead of observing who she is and really appreciating her goodness.
Let's talk about your plans for education. I understand you'd like to introduce children to the trades earlier than they currently are.
Definitely. So when we talk about education, we talk about kindergarten through 5th grade taking out technology so we can really focus on the core academic subjects. But then we want to reintroduce technology in 6th grade. You know, you have Adopt a Highway. We'd like to see the private sector adopt a classroom. And we want to see them coming in and speaking to our 6th graders, asking the question, how has innovation, technology, AI affected your profession? So we want them to lead discussion in our 6th grade classrooms. And then 7th and 8th grade, we're actually bringing trade back. We want to see workshops, sewing, cooking, all of those classes brought back. And then freshman year, we're saying to every freshman that enters high school, college, career, or calling, just presenting questions that give kids the opportunity to have vision. And then we'd like to see, and we are the first ones that have said this, every senior in the state of Indiana graduate having completed an apprenticeship. We're very excited about this. We believe that we have here in the state of Indiana enough people that are willing to put their time into the next generation, that we can truly see every single senior have some kind of experience in apprenticeships before they graduate.
You've called for a full audit of all of the state's agencies and potentially shutting some down that you conclude are not necessarily essential. If that were to happen, what are some of the agencies that you would want to shut down?
Well, Garrett, we're looking very, very specifically at the Indiana Economic Development Corporation. I've been studying the statutes, the Indiana code that allows for the IADC. It's very interesting. When I was in the first debate, obviously not allowed in the second two debates, but when I was in the first debate, I really exhorted the news to get involved in this conversation. And I'm happy to see that there's so much investigative reporting going on the IEDC. That's concerning. I'm really struggling understanding the constitutionality of the IEDC, so we're looking into that as well. But this is, again, a corporation that's spending billions of dollars. We've got $2 billion to put the pipeline together for LEAP in the Lebanon area. That's in District 4. $2 billion, that's $20 million per county in the state of Indiana. And so that is definitely one of the first places that we're going to audit. We're going to see what's going on. We're going to give full transparency to the people of the state of Indiana. So what we're saying is on Tuesdays, every single Tuesday, we're going to have a press conference. We're going to have the local press in the front, national press in the back. We want the people of the state of Indiana to get engaged with what's taking place in their state.
Let's talk taxes. You said you would like to take a look at potentially scaling back or getting rid of some of the property taxes. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so property tax, this is a hard area because the kind of change that we want to see is change that's going to affect every single county. And so really this conversation needs to take place on the local level and the state level. What we would like to see is we'd like to see 65 and older completely allowed to be, let's see, we don't want them to have to pay taxes. 65 and older would not have to pay tax. If you are moving into your home and you're a first-time home buyer, we'd love to see no tax or at least a fixed rate tax. That's another thing that we've been talking about. Can we get a fixed rate whenever people are moving into their home that then is not going to be reflective of referendums that are pushed through in schools, but instead we've got a steady tax that everybody's used to. So we're looking at a fixed rate tax. And then lastly, we've looked at Hawaii. Hawaii has a low property tax of 0.11. And so we're saying in the state of Indiana, we need to reallocate our money in a way that's going to support every county, but property taxes are constantly increasing, and it's really become a burden for many residents in the state of Indiana. And it's a very serious thing because Indiana Hoosiers are fixed income Hoosiers, and so we need to do something that's going to help every single Hoosier, and that's one of the things we're thinking about in property taxes.
Coming up, a state senator explains why he's asking voters to promote him to the U.S. House. Welcome back. Voters in East Central Indiana will choose a new member of Congress in November. Congressman Greg Pence in January announced he will not seek another term. That triggered a stampede of Republicans looking to succeed him. We begin with State Senator Jeff Rotz.
I've been in the General Assembly or in the Senate for 10 years, and ultimately the decision came down to do I want to stay in Indiana where we get things done or go to a place of what I would categorize as chaos in a lot of respects. Ultimately, the decision came that if people don't go there for the right reasons, then Indiana will suffer and every state in the union will suffer if we continue the current behavior, whether it's divisive politics or some of the policies that are being implemented and have been implemented, and we're playing them out as we speak today. So ultimately that was the decision point. Indiana's a great place. I think we've done a great job in the Indiana General Assembly making sure that we have a balanced budget and have done a lot of good things. And I'm sure there are pundits out there that would disagree with me, but Indiana in a lot of respects has become maybe not the destination state we'd like to see yet for economic development, because that's the trigger, in my opinion, that helps everybody get a leg up in their life. And so, but we're on the move. We're certainly not behind. We're being looked at as the #1 state in the nation to create a new business. And then we want to be a destination state as well. So I'm proud to have participated in the process to get us where we are today.
So right now, immigration and border security are pretty much the top issues this election cycle. On your website, you say that you want to close the border to illegal immigration. How would you do that in practice?
The first thing is going to take the ability for the presidency to come alongside Congress, and because of the executive orders that got us where we are today, and if we could pass legislation, if legislation could be passed, which is a secondary part of this, in a perfect world, the president would lock down and say we're going to close the border. I think it's the number one issue in our nation for security purposes, for the issue of illegal drugs coming across the border, and so it's somewhat of a replay. But if we go back about 3.5 years, our border was in much better shape than it is today. And if we remember, there were conversation about, well, it got out that we're going to do X, and there'd be a flood of people come across in preparation for we were going to do the next step, which is put up a wall or whatever those steps were. And so the news cycle runs farther than the borders of the United States of America. That was proven there. But we got some serious issues, an incredible amount of people, more than we at least have recorded, as many or more than the population of Indiana. So we're somewhere in the 7 million person range. And the question is, why are we doing it? And why are we allowing the drugs and untold? We don't know necessarily who's come across the border. Are they terrorists? Are they ISIS? Are we headed for an issue that just happened this past weekend in Russia with the killing of 120 or so people in a auditorium? We don't know those things, and so this is serious business.
The state Senate took the lead on Indiana's abortion ban. Would you support a nationwide abortion ban if you were in Congress?
I'm a man of faith first, and a husband and a father, and believe in the traditional family. And my answer is yes. If that came up, I would certainly support it. I think, Indiana, we went through a lot of discussion about this issue. But the sanctity of life is important to me.
Why not leave that up to the states, though? Because in a lot of states where abortion was actually put on the ballot, voters overwhelmingly have voted to expand or maintain access to abortion.
Sure. Well, I think ultimately, when you look at those numbers that I'm talking about, I don't know how anybody could put their head on a pillow at night knowing that they could have participated in a situation where it eliminated the possibility of thousands. If Indiana had 700 a month, we're talking thousands and thousands of babies annually, untold numbers. That's my answer. There's responsibility we have as citizenry to do, I think, a personal responsibility that's part of this equation, as is all of America, right? We have personal responsibility to follow the law. And my parallel is responsibility, personal responsibility in all these situations.
So there's been a bit of a rift in the Republican Party over aid to Ukraine and to international alliances and relations more broadly. Where do you fall on that?
Well, there's some conversation, the Ukraine was looked at to be part of NATO several years back, and it doesn't appear that it ever happened, I don't believe. But nonetheless, there were some agreements made. And so does the United States, as a NATO participant, do we have some kind of a requirement to participate over there? That's the first question that we have to ask ourselves. And the second thing is it wise to send billions of dollars over there? Or is it wise, if we do have an obligation, do we send artillery over there instead of sending money over there? Those are the questions we have to ask ourselves. And ultimately, beginning and end of the day, if Russia plows through, takes out the Ukraine, and that becomes part of Russia, what's beyond that? What's the next endeavor for Russia? Those are things that from a foreign landscape, I don't understand some of those things. And so unless a person, what I'm ultimately saying is unless a person get on the inside and see what those ramifications are, would it change our viewpoint on how we're doing what we're doing?
Coming up, another abortion ruling, a curfew, and a third party bows out. Indiana's best political team breaks it all down. Welcome back to All Indiana Politics as we welcome in two members of Indiana's best political team, Democrat Laura Beck and Republican Mario Massalamani. Let's begin with Thursday's ruling by the Indiana Court of Appeals that upheld a narrow injunction against Indiana's abortion ban on religious liberty grounds. Laura, let's begin with you. How big of a win is this for abortion rights advocates?
Well, I think it's a marginal win. I think that because Indiana's near total abortion ban is one of the most restrictive in the nation, rolling that back is going to be incredibly challenging. I think we are definitely seeing the after effects of it, particularly as it relates to victims of sexual assault, rape, incest, and then also as it relates to the health of the mother. So, unfortunately, in Indiana, because we have such a restrictive ban, and because it's now up to the states, it's going to be really interesting to me to see how this moves forward. But I think the Indiana General Assembly, because they are convinced of how right they are on this issue, they're going to try and tighten it up as much as they possibly can, and that opens the door to a whole bunch of other issues, especially related to contraception and even in vitro fertilization. So I would like to say that I think it's going to make a huge difference, but I'm not terribly sure that it will just yet.
Mario, the judges wrote the law's exceptions undercut the state's argument about a compelling interest. How worried should the state be about the words in this order being used against the law when and if this case goes to trial?
I think what's going to happen is that the Attorney General is going to ask transfer to the Supreme Court. The Indiana Supreme Court has stated that the state of Indiana has a compelling interest to protect the life of the unborn. And as such, this General Assembly can create laws to protect the life of the unborn. And anytime there's any legislation that's drafted or passed, the courts are the ones that will kind of fine tune it and determine, how narrow or how broad those laws can be interpreted and applied. And so this is just a process that's going on through the trial court, the Court of Appeals, and now the Supreme Court to determine how these laws are going to be applied, how broadly, what the exceptions are going to be, and how they can be used. And so I think that we are looking at months of additional fine-tuning as the Supreme Court determines, if this law is valid, which I believe they will, and then what exceptions and how those exceptions will be applied.
Let's switch to local policy. After 3 mass shootings in as many weekends, IMPD says it will enforce state curfew laws against juveniles in Indianapolis. And Mario, state lawmakers have long blocked cities from enforcing gun laws that are stricter than the state allows. Do they bear some responsibility for those shootings?
Not at all. These laws are currently in place. IMPD and the city of Indianapolis is just not implementing or adhering to these laws. If you go downtown at 10, 11 o'clock at night, there are groups of teenagers roaming the streets, and there are currently laws in place that should be applied. It makes no sense why IMPD, the prosecutor's office, and Mayor Hogsett have not been requiring these students to get off, or these kids to get off the streets. And if these kids are not being held responsible, well, their parents should be. Because you should not be having 13 to 16 to 18, 17-year-old kids roaming the streets at night till 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. And so these laws are in place. Indianapolis has decided not to implement or not to, basically follow these laws. And that's why you're seeing these problems. These laws were put in place for a reason. And that was to make sure that these kids don't
Mario,
get in trouble.
I'm getting a little short on time. I want to give Laura a chance to respond as well. And Laura, to Mario's point, how much of this is really doable if the parents aren't stepping up?
Well, I think that there's a significant amount that lies with parental responsibility, yes. But when parents are not taking responsibility, or they have other things that they're focusing on and not on their kids, then yes, I think if you're out at downtown or anywhere that you're not supposed to be at odd hours of the day and night, what the police are going to be doing is they're going to be protecting not just the children, but they're going to be protecting other people as well. So this is for everybody's safety involved. So I think think enforcing curfew, and I think making sure there is curfew is very important. Now, I'm the mom of a teenager. He may not agree with me on that. But fortunately, he doesn't watch me on any television or really in real life anyway. So, but I do think that there needs to be some type of accountability. And frankly, being a parent is tough. Being a parent is challenging. But at the same time, you need to make sure that your kids are not downtown and are not engaging in activities that involve guns and those types of things.
I've got about 10 seconds left here. Much lighter note, if you will. Really quickly, what are your eclipse plans on Monday?
Mario, you go first.
So I gave my office the day off. So my plan is to hang out with my kids and watch the eclipse with them. So nothing too exciting. Just spending the day with my two boys.
Yeah, Laura?
I will be likely in my backyard with eclipse glasses on. So that's with my family as well.
Thank you both.
Including my team.
We'll be right back.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for All Indiana Politics. Don't forget to tune in tomorrow for our special coverage of the total solar eclipse. We'll see you next Sunday.
From Wish TV, this is All Indiana Politics Podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network. Watch All Indiana Politics live Sunday mornings at 9:30 on Wish TV and at wishtv.com. Subscribe to this podcast and listen weekly here on the All Indiana Podcast Network. And be sure to discover even more great podcasts at allindianapodcastnetwork.com.